Hi everyone, welcome to another session of Let's Talk with Ayurveda. I am Dr. Manan Gandhi, and I'm going to be talking live with a lot of people, interacting with all the comments that come. If you are probably watching this on YouTube a little bit later, then you probably might not be able to read the comments. So I'll read all the comments out and let you know. Hi Harpreet. Hello everyone. Welcome to another session of Let's Talk with Ayurveda. Hi Neil. Hi Anjali ji. Hello everyone. Right, so I think let me just wait for a while. Probably we can have a conversation until more people join in, and then we can start. Good afternoon. Hi Dishank. Right. So we're just waiting for more people to join in before we start. In the meanwhile, if there's something that you want to ask me or tell me, we can just start off like that, and then I can come to the topic that I have in mind that I want to talk about today. Hi Robin. Hi Kaustubh. Hi Kripa. Good morning Kaustubh. Hi Paresh bhai. How are all of you all? Okay, just for the people who've come, I'm just waiting for a little bit. Let more people join in before I start. Till then, if you all have anything to ask me, tell me, please type it in the comments below. I'll be happy to have a conversation about it. Hi. Type whatever you all want to ask me, whatever you all want to tell me. Type all of that. Hi Simran. Hi Ravi. Hi Narendra. Alright, I think in a minute or two we'll just start, because let's not delay. Hi Amuda. Okay, in the meanwhile, if you all want to ask me anything, you all want to tell me anything, please be my guest. You could ask me. Right, so I think let's just begin. Post-COVID recovery patient should take what precaution and what immunity? So normally, post-COVID, what happens is that a patient could exit COVID at different kinds of situations. There could be someone who's exiting COVID without any permanent damage to the lungs or without any significant impact. They're almost not asymptomatic, maybe a little bit of fever or something very similar. For those patients, you really don't need to worry. It's as good as, you've come out of a general viral fever. But there could be patients who've come out of COVID with probably a remnant of the COVID impact in their lungs. And the CT scan or even a simple X-ray of the lungs could actually show that they have patches in the lungs that are remnant patches. Now, if that is the case, then you really need to start treating your lungs so that in the future, it doesn't really bother you. So it's very important for you to ensure that you're doing something for the lungs after the COVID, if in case you are even moderate to severe, severely infected. After you've gotten COVID, the chances of you getting a relapse are extremely minor. I wouldn't say it's not possible, because there have been cases where relapses have taken place after COVID is completely cured. But to be very honest, they've been so few, and you really need to do a lot of things wrong with your immunity to get it back. So ideally, what I want to tell you all is that after your COVID is done, ensure that you start doing things like pranayams. ensure you start waking up early in the morning. The first hour of waking up, that's the of sunrise, sorry, the first hour of sunrise is the best time where you can do these pranayams. That will really help you. And that's it. Just ensure that your lungs aren't damaged. Maybe do another test, maybe do another CT of your lungs, maybe do one simple x-ray of your lungs. See if your lungs are affected, because if they are not, then you are lucky. You've just scraped past COVID without having any problem whatsoever. Some eye care tips since screen time has increased due to work from home. Okay, so this is actually happening not just to you but to me also, because I am seeing patients online and I'm seeing them for about 6 to 8 hours in a day, which is a lot, right? A lot of screen time. I normally hardly spend time in the screen because I'm working at the clinic, I'm seeing people face to face, but these days it's happening to me as well. A very, very good tip, and I want all of you all to hear this, maybe note it down, is that a lot of times when you have a lot of screen time, you have dry eyes. A lot of people have itchy eyes, a lot of people have burning in the eyes. They even have redness or yellowish discoloration of the eyes. If you can take something that is known as mulethi in Hindi, that's also known as jethi mad in Gujarati, it's known as jeshtha mad in Marathi, it's known as licorice in Sanskrit, in English, and in Sanskrit it's called yashti madhu. This powder is available almost at any allopathic store. You can simply make a paste out of it by mixing it in water. Close your eyes and apply it on the entire eyelid. Don't just apply it on the lid, but the entire socket. So cover the entire socket. Don't keep it on the eyes. Close the eyes and apply it. Keep it for about 15-20 minutes. It will get slightly dried. It will dry off and it will just start coming off. Okay, and then that's when you can wash it off. If you do this, you will actually find that people are suffering from the reddish discoloration of the eyes, etc. Your eyes will become bright white. It increases the tricolor vision as well. It will give you significant amount of rest of the eyes. So your screen time, even though it's increased, will not really bother you too much. And it's a great and a very, very simple thing to do. Okay, is rheumatic fever curable? Absolutely, it's curable. There's definite cure for it. Good morning, doctor. Why is Manas Mitra prescribed? Is it a better substitute for Restil? Absolutely not. Ayurveda and allopathy are what I could say, they are the opposite spectrum when it comes to mental diseases. Right now I don't know why, but I think because of the Sushant Singh Rajput event, a lot of people are talking about a lot of mental illnesses, and I think Corona is also really getting a lot of mental illnesses to the forefront, because a lot of people are suffering who in other circumstances probably would not have suffered. So when you talk about mental problems, what happens is that Ayurveda and allopathy look at it very differently. What allopathy looks at is their mentality is how do I get the person back to normal as soon as possible. So what they're looking at here is how do we quickly get the person out from the symptom that the person is facing. Which means that if a person is anxious, if he is nervous, if he is constantly thinking, and that thinking and the anxiety is not really allowing him to sleep, what they'll do is they'll give you medicines that probably work like sedatives, right? They will calm the mind down and they will relax the mind down so that the person becomes better. The person thinks better. The person becomes basically more calm, tranquil, probably a little bit more sleepy. So they dull the mind down. When we talk about Ayurveda, what we do here is that we don't really put the mind to sleep. We do not look at how to quick fix the problem and how to solve the symptoms immediately. We look at it very differently. We look at how do we solve the problem and not the symptom. We don't look at how quickly can we get this guy back on track. So we don't look at quick fixes. We look at how can we get him back on track so that he never really falls into this kind of a problem again. So I am not looking of in Ayurveda of a way of how can I get him back to work tomorrow. I am looking at the patient and saying, listen, how do I solve this problem so that he never has this problem? I don't care if it takes 1 month, but I have to solve it completely. So there's a difference in relief and cure. So when we're talking about things like Restil is a relief. You're not getting sleep, take a Restil, you'll get sleep. You're done. But when I'm talking about things like Manas Mitra, one of the medicines that we use, what I'm doing, I'm activating the mind so that the mind can actually think more, do more, rather than dulling it down and putting it to sleep. So it's absolutely the opposite. And so that it can overcome the thought rather than escape the thought. and that is the difference. So which is why Manas Mitra is not a substitute for Restil in a very like for like manner, but they both address the same problem in a different way. Alright, since I get acidity quite often, which pranayam should I do? Okay, for people who get acidity, it's very simple. It's called Sitkari and Shitali are the two pranayams that you can do. Shitali pranayam is probably the most effective pranayam. I'll show you how it's done. It's very simple. So you take the tongue and you roll it like this. Try and inhale not from the nose but from the mouth using a U-shaped tongue. And when you do that, breathe in as long as you can, okay, and then breathe out as slowly as you can, but that breathe out comes through the nose. If you can start doing this, in fact in about 10 minutes your acidity is gone with Shitali pranayam. It's a very simple practice to do and that can help you. Alright, so I think I've answered the questions until people join in. I have quite a few people coming in today. So let's just start with the session. Today what I've planned to do is, rather than just talk about question answer session, let's just keep a little bit of a theme to it, and when I will obviously answer your questions and I'll try to be as available to you as possible in terms of helping you out, clearing doubts and answering things. Let's just stick to a theme. Today actually I was thinking for quite a while, what do I talk about? A few things that did come into mind was, should I talk about dietetics, or will it get too technical? Will it have enough practical value that you will take out of it or not? So I was wondering, I probably went out and I asked my parents, what are the things that you like a doctor to talk about, or you like someone like me to talk about? But after doing so much thinking for about half an hour or so, the answer that I got was absolutely nothing. I really didn't know what I should talk about. But then while talking to you, I think I should talk about things that are more practical in nature. Things that you probably might be making a mistake about, or there might be things that are health myths, that I call it. Things that you do considering that they are very, very healthy, but they might really ruin you. The reason being is the maximum amount of patients that I see are health conscious people. I know it sounds very funny, but that's the truth. Health conscious people visit my clinic more often than people who don't bother about their health. Not because that they come to me that they're already healthy and they want to become more healthy. I have very few of those. But they actually get diseased more often. It's because these health conscious people listen to theories. And these are tons of theories. And they try and experiment their only body that they have with those theories to see if it works for them. And if it doesn't, they end up falling very, very sick. And that's why they come to me and saying, listen, I tried this. I don't know whether it's working or not, but I'm sick. And now Dr. Manan, you have to get me out of this. And that's what happens to most of my patients. Had they just been following what their Baap Dadas are following, I'm sure I wouldn't be having so many patients. I am damn sure. Okay. So what are these theories? What are these tricks? I'll tell you some of the funny theories as well. Okay. But let's start with a few common health myths that I've found. And then we'll, in the middle, probably as a break, I'll give you one or two of the funny theories that I've heard. I will not name the person who's invented the theory, but I'll still tell you a few of them. Okay, so the first health myth that people have is about water. Okay, and there are quite a few health myths about water. I think 5 of them that I'll address today. The first health myth about water is, a lot of people consider, and a lot of, I think, yoga teachers also spread this. I don't know why they do this, but they do. A lot of people consider that when you wake up in the morning and if you drink like a lot of water, you detox your entire body, your kidneys become brilliant and everything goes rosy, gardeny, and you are absolutely fine. You're not going to be suffering from a disease, which is ridiculous. You should not drink excessive amount of water in the morning. Water intake, and especially water intake at one go, is extremely important for you to manage. It does take a lot of factors into consideration, especially the one humidity factor. So people who are living in Bombay, and most of my patients are Bombay because I am Bombay based, because you're living in Bombay or living in a very tropical and a highly humid climate, if you drink a lot of water in the morning, you are going to suffer from the following. Number one, you will have water retention problems, which means that you will bloat up. You'll start having swellings, maybe in the fingers, maybe in the hands, maybe in the legs, maybe in the face, right? Maybe in different areas. You'll start having this kind of a bloating, you'll start having water retention problems. Secondly, you'll start having acidity problems. And I'm going to talk about acidity separately. I'm not going to be talking about acidity here, but in case I forget, please some of you all just type acidity at the end, so I remember that I have to talk about acidity as well. Right? A lot of people are going to suffer from, because of water retention, they are basically going to suffer from obesity. Their weight will just not go down, and they will start having indigestion because you've just taken so much water, you've killed the digestive fire. So because of indigestion, then they'll start having gases, bloating. They're not really going to feel very hungry. Their appetite will go down. If they're having 3 or 4 rotis, they'll come down to about 2 rotis. And that will start happening over the long term. Okay? So I'm not saying you shouldn't be drinking water. Maybe when you wake up in the morning, have a glass. But that's it. Don't have a liter or 2 liters of water at once. Especially early in the morning. Right. The second mistake or the second health myth that people follow is that they have their food and they want to flush it down. So after their meals, they have this nice 1 glass of water. When they basically go and put their thalis in the sink, they'll have a full glass of water. And that, to my mind, is such a simple thing to do, is to avoid drinking that water. But people know it. It's in the common knowledge. But they just don't do it. And it causes the amount of diseases that causes. It's in Ayurveda, it's called Vishapradam. It's called poison when you have water after food. It makes no sense. It has no benefits. Even allopathy says you shouldn't be doing it. Even naturopathy says you shouldn't be doing it. Even homeopathy says you shouldn't be doing it. But still, I find the majority of people I know, after their meals, will want a full glass of water, and which I think is absolutely ridiculous. You need to stop this. If you consider this to be healthy, then let me tell you it's not. Okay, for any region, for any environment. A lot of people think drinking water before food is great. Let me also tell you it's not. Drinking water before food does not help. Do not do this. Okay? Water should not be had after food for at least 45 minutes to an hour, and shouldn't be had before food for at least 20 minutes. What you should do is always sip water along with your meals. Only and only if there's a particular condition, and there are a few conditions, where a doctor comes and tells you then you need to drink water before or after food, that's the only time where you should do this. Drinking water before food reduces your weight, but not in a healthy way. And drinking water after food increases your weight, but again not in a healthy way. Right? So don't take advantage of this shloka of Ayurveda where it says that drinking water before food reduces weight and drinking water after food increases weight as a healthy measure. Because again another shlok says that before and after is both not to be done. After is much more worse though. Okay, and I see a lot of people, and the last point of water intake, see a lot of people who are saying that 4 liter pani pina chahiye, 5 liter pina chahiye. You should have like a lot of water at once. You should have a lot of water throughout the entire day, even if you don't have it at once. I don't subscribe or agree to any of these things. There is no particular liter measurement that you need to follow. That listen, I have to do 4 liters, listen, I have to do 5 liters. Doesn't work like that. When we consider how much water intake you need to take, it's basically taking into consideration what your age is, what your height is, what your weight is, and what kind of an atmosphere you're in. If you've been out in the sun for the whole day, you're dehydrating, you need more water. If you've been in an air-conditioned environment with a sedentary lifestyle, you don't need so much water. If you're in a dry Rajasthan, deserty kind of a climate, you need more water. If you're in a highly humid Bombay kind of a climate, you probably don't need enough water. But let's just say for a person living in Bombay, a female who probably has an average height of about 5'1", 5'2", okay, and who's not extremely obese or overweight, for them about 1.5 liters of water is good enough. Right? In this particular season where it's high humidity and monsoon kind of a season which is there in Bombay right now. And for a male of an average height of say 5'6", 5'8", 5'10", about 2 liters of water is good enough. So on an average, if you are somewhere close to 1.5 to 2 liters of water, you are not too much off track. But the only important thing that I want to tell you here is that people like us or doctors like us, we're pretty much useless. All we are, we're just translators. The only reason why we work is because you are not perceptive and you don't observe your body. Your body is the real doctor. Your body is the real health. It will tell you when it needs water. It will tell you when it needs food. The problem is that you've been so accustomed to ignoring your body that you just don't read the signs or don't understand or misinterpret the signs. And because of that, you have to come to someone like us who will basically interpret the signs for you, either by looking at your pulse or the nadi, or by looking at your tongue, or merely just by seeing you and listening to your symptoms. So if you just listen to your body and have water according to your thirst, then it will not be a problem. But then comes a problem. There is one issue. A lot of you, in fact, I would actually go to the extent of saying 40% of my patients, after they drink a glass of water, they still feel thirsty. So what they do is they have another glass of water, and the thirst just isn't quenched. So they take half a glass of water more because that's all their stomach can now take. And that's it. Now they just can't have water. And the reason why they took the second glass was because one glass did not quench the thirst. You thought in your head that there is dryness, so I need water. So you tried to quench the thirst with water, and for years you've been doing this, and despite doing this, you should realize by now that water isn't quenching your thirst, which means your body did not want water. What it wanted was ghee or oil or lubrication. Your body needs lubrication, and you've constantly been filling your body with water, expecting water to lubricate your body, and that doesn't work. So for the people who are listening here, in case if you do feel this kind of a thirst, have a glass of water and you still feel thirst, it doesn't go, it means you didn't need water. You need more lubrication in the body, so start working towards that. The next, okay, let's take a break here and let me talk about one of the theories that I was going to talk about. It was ridiculous. It's funny. So these days with diet, with a lot of things happening, there are multiple theories going in. Every doctor somehow comes up with their own theory, and they put their credentials on the line. I am a 20-year-old experienced cardiologist, did 10,000 surgeries, etc., etc. And this is my theory. So they put a lot of credentials behind it. But there are theories that are going on left, right, and center. And people are actually subscribing to these theories and experimenting with their body. And trust me, if that experiment doesn't go well, you don't have another body to rent. This is it. This is your body. Without this, you don't even have a family. With your corpse, even your wife will run away from it. Okay, so this is the only precious thing that you have, because this is the only means by which you can achieve your goal. So don't take it very lightly and go with WhatsApp theories or be some XYZ person saying it. Not even what I tell you, but the difference is that I don't give you theories. I give you what Ayurveda says, what is scriptured, what is tried and tested for 5,000 years. I don't believe in coming up with theories because I don't think that people like us have the auqad to come up with these kind of theories with a little bit of years of practice. It has to come through subjective knowledge, but I'll keep that topic aside. There was one theory a cardiologist had come up to. I don't know whether it's right or not. I'm not going to name the cardiologist. If you still understand who it is, then I'm sorry, with due respect to him. And I've heard this. He basically said that a person should have a kind of a diet and a lifestyle that ensures that the human being has a heart block by the age of 25. So you should eat the amount of kachra that is possible, so that you are supposed to have a heart block by the age of 25. That is the theory. Why should you work hard to get a heart block by the age of 25? Is because if you do that, the theory suggests that your heart will automatically make a bypass. It will automatically make a bypass because you already have your main artery blocked. So that in the future, when you are suffering from a heart problem, you don't need a bypass because it's already made. So this is one theory that I've heard. And I can tell you at least 15 to 16 different such theories that people and doctors, cardiologists, big doctors, big name guys are constantly coming up with. So the reason why I'm talking about this today is because I'm talking about these health myths and these kind of theories that have been floated around, that come in Times of India, that come in this paper, that paper, they come in your WhatsApp, they come in your news feeds. You know, neem becomes a superfood. You have haldi saying like haldi khaya curcumin liya to best hai. You have a lot of things that are coming up, and that basically vivek khatam ho jata hai. You know, you don't know what to do, you're just confused. So I'm just debunking them for now. If you all know any theories, please ask me about this at the end of the video. I have made a list of the basic common ones. There are multiple ones that I can talk about, but things that probably a lot of people maybe do. Okay, so the water ones that I've already done. The next thing that has been going on for a while, the next one is eating raw food. A lot of people say, you know what, how can I fall ill? I have salads. So this entire concept in your mind is that you've had salads. It is impossible for you to fall ill for the mere fact that you think you have salads. Let me tell you this, and I have spoken about this in my last Instagram live. I don't know how many of you all were there. Maybe a few of you all were not there. But yes, I did speak about this in my last Insta live. Salads in Bombay, very difficult to digest. If you are having salads, have boiled, have cooked salads. Do not have raw vegetables, because you're having raw vegetables. What you think or what comes to mind or what was propagated in the late part of 2018 and the early part of 2019 was that by the act of cooking and boiling vegetables, you think you are losing nutrition. You think if you've eaten something raw, then it is full of nutrition. But if you've boiled it, you are somehow burning away all the nutrition from the vegetable, leaving it nutritionless. That's what was propagated, and that's what people actually thought. But late 2019, we've been saying it for years, but the magic words are scientifically proven. So late 2019, scientifically it was proven and debunked that even if you cook or boil a vegetable, you do not lose nutritive properties. So I would ask you a very simple question, that would you take something kacha, difficult to digest, may have a lot of pathogens in it because it's not boiled, right? May have a lot of infections in it, in it because it's very, very raw. It may not have any infection, but it's still very, very hard on your stomach to digest. Considering the fact that you may be able to digest it, it takes a lot of effort for your intestines, and you're not really keeping it as light as you should. You living in a tropical area like Bombay, should you have raw vegetables? Okay, especially in a seasonal environment like monsoons or heat that's going to follow the monsoons, where our digestive fire is the weak. Or can you get the same nutrition by boiling it, making it soft, making it easy to assimilate, without having any problem of pathogens, without having any problem of digestion, and you can probably even cook it in a few interesting ways as well. Which one would you choose? It makes no sense to go with boiled and cooked vegetables, and yet people just continue having raw foods and continue having salads, continue living in the early 2000s for some reason. Probably because they don't know this, but in case if you don't, I am telling you this. Please do not eat raw food unless you don't have an option. Okay. The next theory, and I've seen this theory from a lot of dietitians as well, and a lot of nutritionists and many people. Right. The next theory is that humans are people who basically should live on fruits. Right. Fruits is life. And we shouldn't be having grains. So, jowari mat khao, don't have rice, don't have ragi, don't have bajra, don't have all of these things. You should only eat fruits. Make the entire meal only on fruits. Basically live like chimpanzees or something similar. Because we are probably born from the apes. So live like the apes. This is another theory that I've floated in. I'm not against fruits. Don't get me wrong here. But I think a little bit of heaviness in the stomach, grains, should absolutely be a part of the diet, with fruits also being a part of the diet. People who are normally of a Vata kind of a Prakriti, and if you don't know your Prakriti, even in the previous videos that we've saved on IGTV, I've given the link where you can actually check your Prakriti by clicking on it. If you're a Vata kind of a Prakriti, fruits will help. Okay, they'll help to a great extent, especially sweet fruits. If you're of a Pitta kind of a Prakriti, fruits will help you to a small extent. You can have a little bit of fruits, maybe a moderate amount. And specifically sweet fruits, don't have those sour kind of fruits here. But if you're a Kapha kind of a Prakriti, suffering from a Kapha kind of a problem, specifically sweet fruits are very, very bad for you. In fact, a lot of times when I consult patients, and including the one I did yesterday, I actually told the patient to not have fruits. Specifically, no kind of fruits. There are certain cases where you shouldn't be having fruits. So, even when you do take fruits, keep a few things in mind. Number one, eat according to what problem you have or what Prakriti you are in case if you don't have a problem. Number two, always fruit should be had specifically early in the morning and not after a meal. Not at night. Number three, when you're taking fruits, don't make a khichdi of fruits. Don't take ye phal, ye phal, ye phal, ye phal और उसका salad बना के खाऊंगी या खाऊंगा. Don't do that. Take one fruit and ideally eat that fruit for the entire day. Don't mix two fruits. Not just, together. But, so for example, if you've decided to have pomegranate, okay, anar. Have anar today. Maybe tomorrow you can have a papaya. Maybe day after you can probably have a muskmelon or a watermelon. How do you know your Prakriti? Very simple. I'm going to be giving a link probably in this video as well. I have given a link in my last IGTV video as well. It is saved in IGTV, so you can simply go to my profile and find it. It's a simple test. You just have to fill in the answers. I don't know who's done this, but there's a great website that has a very interesting, very easy test, which is more or less accurate. Right? So, with fruits, my suggestion would be that you have one fruit in a day. Don't mix too many fruits. And the most important thing, do not mix milk with fruits. Anyone who mixes milk with fruits or has milk even within 2 hours of fruits or fruits within 2 hours of milk is going to develop skin diseases. If anyone wants skin diseases, the quickest way possible is to have milk and fruit together. Right? I myself have suffered from a very major skin disease because of the fact that I didn't know this when I was young, and my grandmother used to think that doodh keri khao. In Gujaratis we have this aam and milk. The mangoes are raw, not the raw, the ripe mangoes are cut into these small pieces mixed with milk, and I used to take this throughout my childhood because I loved it. And then there was this strawberry cream available at Naturals and different ice cream areas, and this was a huge mistake, and I found out later. Right? So having milk and fruit together is probably one of the worst things that you could do. So when it comes to fruit, I think these are the few things that I want to talk about. If you are making any of these mistakes, thinking that you are doing something healthy by having milk and fruit together because both are nutritive, you are making a very, very big mistake. Please stop it immediately. Another mistake that I found is that, and this used to happen very, very often a few years back, it's taken a dramatic turn, but there are still people who follow this, and that is, eat 6 times to 7 times a day. हर 2 घंटे कुछ खाओ. There is this huge theory that is making the rounds. Yes, fruit ice creams have to be ignored. They have to be ignored. They must be ignored. Fruit ice creams are basically a patient generating machine for a dermatologist. Should completely be ignored. Okay. So this theory of eating every 2 hours, and a lot of people do practice it, is going to clearly upset your circadian cycle. A circadian cycle is nothing but your body clock. Your body has a clock. So there is a particular time when you naturally feel hungry. So for a lot of you, you'd probably realize that when you used to go to school, for example, you had this lunch break at say 12:15, and when you didn't go to school, when you were in a summer vacation, you'll still find that no matter what, at 12:15 you automatically feel hungry. Because your body has this one circadian cycle where the digestive juices are secreted at one particular moment, right? And when that cycle is already set, your body works much better. So if you have food 6 to 8 times in a day, what you're really doing is you're upsetting your circadian cycle. You will never really be having a good appetite because you'll not be able to eat a lot at once. and you will constantly have this demand for eating food again and again, which may or may not be available, and that may cause a lot of problem, right? So this is one theory I think should completely be debunked. If you have this, if you feel good with eating 5 or 6 times in a day, then you need to get your sugar checked, because it probably might be that your sugar is dropping, or you might have a vata based problem. That doesn't mean that because you feel good you should do it. It means that if you feel good by doing this, you need to visit a doctor. Right. I have a few questions, so let me answer them before I go ahead. Dry fruits work the same as fruits. Amras is great. Don't have it with milk. I have papaya daily in the evening. Is that okay? A lot of people, there is an entire concept, Harpreet, called as Okasatmya. Okasatmya concept in Ayurveda means when you do the wrong thing since childhood, your body has become so used to it, is that when you now do it, it doesn't show immediate negative effects. Which means it probably might not be the correct analogy, but it's like the concept that we had earlier of Vishakanya. Vishakanya is basically a girl that used to be given poison in a small dose every day, and because it's been given every day, a little bit of poison when it's given to the person, that person becomes somewhat immune. And it's not a right example for it, but only another example is alcohol. If you have a little alcohol every day, then it takes more alcohol for you to get high. Correct? I don't know of other examples, but similarly, when you've been doing wrong things since a long time, a little every day, then it doesn't seem to have a major impact on you when you do it once. A good example is people in Calcutta. They have this entire thing of having fish and milk together. Now, fish and milk is one of the worst things you can do. It's as bad as fruit and milk, right? You're going to have skin diseases, which is why Calcutta is India's probably the world's capital for skin diseases, because they have fish and milk together. Even Singapore, fish and milk together, skin diseases capital. So, but because they've been doing it since childhood, if you have fish and milk together, you're going to find a reaction very soon. If they have it because they're used to it, it takes time. That's Oksatmya. So if you have papaya in the evening, it's A, not good for you. So the answer is it's not good for you. But because you're used to it, or because you have it for a long time, it will take a longer time for you to have a negative effect. So you are at a small level immune to it. But that doesn't mean you should continue doing it. It is said that we should drink water while sitting. Is it right? Yeah, it's preferred. I think you should also eat your meals, have your water while seated. It makes a lot of sense, but the amount of hype given to this drinking water while sitting is probably not justified. A lot of things are given a lot of hype. For example, I just read this quinoa. Quinoa has given a lot of hype. Quinoa is superfood, this, that. See, everything has its benefits. But what happens is that we tend to take the benefits out of proportion. And that I think shouldn't be done. Okay, I think I've answered a few questions, and then I'll go to the questions again. Let me continue with what I have made a list for. Exercising after food. So a lot of people I know, they eat their meals, and then someone has told them that Ayurveda says after you eat your meals, go for a walk. It will help in digestion and releasing of the gas. Right? So, what Ayurveda says in Shushruta Samhita, it is mentioned that after you eat any meal, what you should do is you should walk 100 steps. How many steps? Just 100 steps. Which means that you shouldn't really be going for a huge walk. What happens is that after you've eaten your food, the entire system the entire blood flow should be directed to your digestive system and not to the hands and the legs that have gone for a walk. So you should walk about 100 steps. Now 100, you don't need to actually calculate 100. It means you have to go for a very, very short, not brisk, slow walk, just to ensure that your churning and the digestive systems have started. Because when you walk, your abdomen contracts and expands to a very small extent. And then you should ideally sit in a Vajrasan. A Vajrasan pose. I think you can just Google it. I will not be able to sit in it right now with the phone. But you should sit in Vajrasan for the next 3 to 5 minutes after you've done the walk, and then you can resume your normal thing. But do not exercise after a meal, because that is really going to result in major problems. Okay, let me answer a few questions. I have a few pending. Drinking water at night. If you're thirsty, drink water, but have it in a sipping fashion. Is it okay to drink water at night at 3 or 4 a.m.? Sure, if you're thirsty, please go ahead. Banana and milk, we call shikran. Not recommended. Not really. If you don't want a skin problem, you shouldn't be doing this. So fruits and milk cannot be consumed together. Absolutely not. That's what I've been stressing upon. They have to be 2 hours apart. What is the best time for green tea? Okay, what is green tea? This entire there's a huge thing called green tea. Okay, it's a huge concept. Everyone thinks green tea is great because the Japanese use it, or the Chinese use it, and they don't put their milk in tea. Green tea is nothing but a kada. You've taken some herbs, right? All these teas, right? You have lemongrass, and then you have adrak. You're basically mixing it in boiling water, and you've made a tea out of it. It's a kada. You're basically using kadas. So kadas are neither good or bad. It basically, do you need the kada or do you not need the kada? Green teas, at least the ones that people normally take, are things that are heaty, drying in nature. So they work in weight loss because they'll dry the body out, they'll dry all the cough out, they'll dry all the water out. It's heaty, so it helps you burn the fat. But if people are suffering from dryness, if they are constipated, doesn't work. If they're suffering from dryness of the skin, dryness of the scalp, dryness of the hair, doesn't work. If they're suffering from osteoporosis, if their nails are brittle, maybe dental issues, hair breaking off, okay, because of calcium deficiency, doesn't work. Suffering from acidity problems, suffering from headache issues, suffering from rashes, urinary tract infections, burning of the eyes, burning of palm soles, any sort of burning, even in the gut region or in the chest region, doesn't work. So for these kind of people, green tea doesn't work. Coming to green tea, for people who put honey in their green tea, please refer them to me for hair fall, because their hair is going to fall like this. Honey should never be heated or mixed in anything hot. If you try to mix honey in anything hot, or if you heat honey directly, you are falling into a great disease. Do not do it. If you know people doing it, please advise them to not do it. Right, so there is no best time for green tea. Probably if you are using it for burning fats or something of the sort, then you could do it at night. I think night time is probably the best time. But if you're having sleeping problems, don't do it at night. I would not advise that. ऋतुचर्या पर विशेष सेशन करें. ऋतुचर्या पर एक्चुअली एक विशेष सेशन कर सकता हूँ मैं, और मुझे करना भी चाहिए, तो मैं शायद उसके ऊपर एक बार करूँगा. दैट इज़ अ गुड आइडिया. शतपावली, I don't know what that means, Kaustubh. I mean, probably it's a Marathi term, but I don't know what it means. My son is 18 and he has premature grey hair. Can you please give me a solution to reverse it? So premature grey hair comes with people who have a lot of soda, okay, or people who have a lot of alkali. There's this entire concept of alkaline water. आजकल बहुत चल रहा है. Alkaline water पीना. There are these Kangen machines, and there are so many things that are coming up that can basically reduce the so-called acidity in the body, because people think acidity is aging, which I agree. Acidity is aging, but when you go to alkaline, what happens is that you actually go into a worse condition. So what people have been doing is that they start doing things that are alkali. In Ayurveda, it's called Kshar. So Charak Samhita, Charak has mentioned that there are things like Pippili. Pippili is that long pepper that you get. Barabar? And the roots of that long pepper are called as Pipri mood, in case if you all know what I'm talking about. Another thing that shouldn't be used long term is Kshar or alkali. So if you take this kind of Kangen water or things that are alkaline in nature, okay, they actually for a short time increase your health to a great extent. They help you tremendously. You take these kind of alkaline things and they will basically neutralize your acidity level. You will feel really good with it. It helps you tremendously. But if you do it for a long term, you're going to get sick. Similarly, things like soda, which is acidic, will again ruin the condition. Things like soya sauce, right? Again, if you use these kind of things, which is very, very salty, they will also cause hair to grey prematurely. Again, there are factors that don't have to do with diet, like stress or anxiety or other factors where you just don't get enough sleep. Or I'm sorry to say this, but when there is excessive sexual activity, right? That is also a reason why premature hair graying happens. So there are multiple factors why this happens. I don't know what factor is responsible for it, but it could be any of these. Eating fruits at around 5 or 6 in the evening. Eat it as early as you can, probably before sunset will work. How else can we consume honey? So when I used to eat honey, so I like honey. Like sometimes I just have this desire to have roti and honey. I just don't eat anything else. It's not a good habit to do, but I just do it sometimes, maybe once in a year or something. So at that time, my mom makes these garam rotis and I have a little bit of honey on the side. I have to wait for 20 minutes until the roti is absolutely cold before I can even touch it to the honey. And that's exactly what you need to learn. Honey shouldn't be even touched with anything that is even mildly hot. Okay. Shat yani 100. Okay, Shat yani 100. So 100. I don't know what Pauli means though. 100 Pauli. I only know that there's one Pauli in a Gujarati Garba song. I'm sorry, I don't know what it means. Walking for 100 steps after food. Ishat Pauli. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, walking for. I didn't know that they have a Marathi version for it. I know the Sanskrit word though. The Sanskrit one. Walking for 100 steps. Yes, that's great. I've already told you about this. After your meals, walk 100 steps. Great. I was taking neem and haldi in the mornings with honey water. But after 3 weeks, I realized it's causing too much heat. Yes, because haldi is heaty. Honey is heaty. Neem is the only cooling thing, but you've probably not been taking enough. So, yeah, and it's also very drying because neem is drying, haldi is drying, and honey also breaks down cough. So it will dry up the body a lot. So should I take neem in short phases only? You can take the neem. You might even take the haldi. But if you mix ghee in it, what will happen is that you've actually countered the dryness part by giving lubrication, while also countering the heat part because ghee is very cooling. Okay, warm water with lemon and honey in the morning is a big no. Yes, it's a very big no because it will cause acidity. Use coloring on hair in the past few months has become very rough. Any remedy? Normally, what I've seen with hair, is that no matter how much externally you do, real treatment for the hair will only happen internally. If I am treating Neeta, then everything should become okay. I don't need to treat her hair per se, right? So when I keep your body into balance, everything should come in, and that's the principle that I normally follow with my patients. Should we be having amla or amla juice regularly? Amla is slightly cooling, but it's very anti-aging, so it helps in a lot of ways, but it is cooling. So people are suffering from any cold kind of a problem, or if there are very few people who for them amla doesn't suit them, they have a sort of acidity problem. For them, don't have amla. Otherwise, amla can be used regularly. In fact, I always tell you that Trifla can be used regularly. It contains amla in any case. I have a weak digestive system. Is alkaline water? Alkaline water is good for everyone, but on a short term. Very simply put, for everyone in today's lifestyle, alkaline water works, but not in a long term. Take it for about 15 days, 20 days, a month, maximum of 42 days. Not more than that. That's it. You're done. Then you resume your normal diet. Okay. Kachi haldi with lemon juice and ginger. Is it good? Too heaty. I mean, if you don't have a heat related problem or an acidity problem, then haldi with lemon juice and ginger works. It in fact even works for haldi and amla mixed together. Work beautifully well for people who have prostate problems. Prostate cancer, prostate issues. Works very well. Can the hair grey be reversed or is it permanent? I'm sorry, it cannot be reversed. At least not with traditional Ayurvedic techniques. Maybe some surgical techniques where they remove the hair and transplant a new hair or something. Maybe. But till I know, that cannot be reversed. Okay, so I think I've answered a few questions. Let me go back to what I wanted to say because I've come up with a small list. The next point that I wanted to talk about is there is this huge concept that almost all of us follow. It's a concept of what we call as desserts. Again, another completely ridiculous concept. You filled your stomach up. You've eaten your full, maybe a little bit less than your full. And now, after you've eaten everything, you end up taking a dessert. Now, what is a dessert? It is the heaviest part of your meal. You probably call for a pastry or a cheesecake, even worse. Okay? and you'll have the heaviest part of the meal on top of your meal, and then expect your body to not fall ill. This entire concept of having a dessert at the end, probably on a taste perspective, is phenomenal. It's a great concept. You've ended with a sweet tooth. You have a nice aftertaste, but it's very bad for you. So a lot of people have this entire thing where they keep one mithai ka piece, maybe a small piece at the end, just to clear their mouth up. And with that, I'm okay. But you can't really have a big dessert at the end of the meal, because that is not a healthy habit. It's going to cause problems. And if you really are hell bent on staying healthy to achieve whatever targets you want to achieve in your life, then these few things that subconsciously you do without really giving it too much thought, probably with this interaction you might start giving it thought. So the next time you order dessert, you'll realize that let's just do it before the meals, so that now that you've had a heavy dessert, you know how much your diet, how much your body can take, and then order your food accordingly or eat food accordingly. That I think should be great. Over exercise is the last thing, is that there's this entire trend of fitness, and I think it's great. A country like India should have a trend of fitness, because the urban population, what it was, India is a very hard-working country. Everyone used to do kheti wadi, and there's a lot of hard work, a lot of transportation used to have a lot of problems, that not everyone can use a train, and that was the old India. But the new India isn't the same. The urban population, we're just sedentary. We're at home. We're not really doing too much. Yes, I have to talk about acidity, and I don't have too much time before Instagram shuts me off. So I'm going to do this very, very quickly. Over exercise is as bad, if not worse, than under exercise. So the question arises of how much should I exercise? I don't know how much to exercise. When do I stop? Let me answer that question. Make notes if you want to, but listen to this very, very carefully. You have to, for one day, only for one day, not every day, put your air conditioner on full blast. Get it on 16, I don't care. Get it at the lowest temperature that you get in the entire year. So for Bombay, I think 16, 17 probably is the lowest, I don't know, lowest temperature that you get in the year. So get your AC to cool the room, make it an Alaska there. And in that cold environment, exercise. Whatever that you would do. If a person normally does skipping, do skipping. If you're on a treadmill, do a treadmill. If you do exercise without any machinery, some HIIT workout, do the HIIT workout. If you're cycling, you have a cycle at home that you do cycling on, do the cycling. Do one exercise that you would do. Okay? And make a note of what time you start that exercise and how long does it take for you to sweat in that cold environment. Okay? So for example, for the person it takes, let's say 10 minutes of exercise, because that exercise, whatever he or she is doing, may be intensive, or it might be a very non-intensive exercise. You're walking on a treadmill. It might take about 25 minutes for him or her to work up a sweat. And if you're walking very, very slowly, you're not working up a sweat, then you're not really exercising. Okay? But if you take, say, 10 minutes, let's take 10 minutes as an example. So you've taken 10 minutes for you to work up a sweat. And a sweat doesn't mean that one drop on the forehead. It means your shirt is a little bit gila, like what I have right now. Right? So if that is the amount of sweat that you work up, then you've known that you are probably sweating well. You have to note the time. So it's 10 minutes. Which means that timing of 10 minutes is what we call as half capacity. Half capacity is what you need to exercise for. So now that you know 10 minutes is your half capacity, next time I never recommend exercising in an air conditioned environment. Next time, do that same exercise without an air condition, maybe out in the open, or in COVID if you can't do it, at least keep your windows open. Do that exercise for 10 minutes. Even if you've started sweating now in 2 minutes. But 10 minutes is the ideal time for exercise for you every day. After 3 months of doing it for 10 minutes, then you can again do the test to see whether your capacity because your stamina will increase. Now in that AC cold 16 degrees, you are able to do it for 15 minutes without sweating. So now do for the next 3 months 15 minutes. Right? And then you can check after 3 months. So every 3 months you can check. Do not over exercise, it increases vata. Do not under exercise, it increases kapha. When you exercise, ideally, that's when you know that you have your health in your hands. It's under your control. And that's probably something that I had to talk about. And that concludes what I had to talk about and what I had come in mind with discussing. I've tried to answer all your questions, but one thing that I have forgotten to talk about is acidity, and I've kept that at the end. I've made a video on acidity as well on my YouTube channel, which is again the Integral Ayurveda, so you can go through it, because I probably will not have enough time to explain. I've already run out of time, but let me start explaining it. If I'm not able to conclude with it, then again, I've told you, I have a video, 6-minute video on YouTube for it. What I wanted to talk about acidity, and it's a big subject, was the water aspect. A lot of people, when they feel acidic, they try to do the following things. The first thing they do is they drink excessive water, because that relieves them. Okay? Because if you have a lot of water, you've just diluted your acids, and that's relieved you. You feel good about it. But if you've relieved and diluted the acids, then you're not going to digest your food. Now, let me take one step back and explain why acidity comes in the first place. Whenever you have an indigestion problem, and indigestion, again I'm repeating, does not necessarily mean constipating. Indigestion means your food is being broken down not well enough. Okay, so when you have indigestion, the food in your stomach ferments. And when that food ferments, anything fermented, becomes acidic. Okay. So now, there are acids that are secreted in your body in general to digest food. Let's call that as good acid. And then there is an indigestion that is becoming fermented and forming acid, which really doesn't help you digest your food. So let's call that bad acid. Right? So you normally have good acid, everyone has good acid. But you also have bad acid. So the total acidity is higher than what it should be. And that's why you have acidity in the body. Now, whether it's refluxed or not is a different story altogether. Because normally when you have indigestion, you also have gas which might reflux the acidity. Okay, but let's keep that aside for now. So indigestion causes acidity. Okay, we need to get that clear. Now that we understand this, what do we do when we have acidity? I've already told you we drink a lot of water. When we drink a lot of water, we feel good. When we feel good, you know what it does? The water reduces your potential to digest food. Right? Now, in acidity, people love eating sweets, love eating things that are heavy. Because if it's heavy, your acids are busy digesting the food. So they're no longer irritating your mucosa. So you feel very good about it. But what happens is that you've already diluted your acids, which is now incapable of digesting heavy meals, and you've had a heavy food. So now that's going to increase your indigestion, hereby increasing your acidity. So drinking water doesn't help. That's why I told you that a lot of people who have a lot of water in the morning or at any time, they gulp a lot of water down at once, will suffer from acidity. Big chance. Number 2, what would you do for acidity? Is you take something that is alkaline. You'll take a neutralizer. You'll take something like Eno, or you'll take something like a soda. Right? What do you do when you take an Eno? Is basically you're taking something alkaline. You're neutralizing the acid. You've neutralized the acid, and the Eno doesn't know that it has to neutralize the bad acid. It will neutralize the good as well. So now again your digestive potential has gone low. You've eaten food, not being digested, indigestion, more bad acid formation, totally higher acidity. Okay, let's go a little bit step further. You have more acidity. What do you do now? You take a Digene, you take a Gelusil. Yes, this full episode will be on YouTube. You take Digene, you take Gelusil, right? And what you've been doing is that you've been diluting it or neutralizing it even further. Again, the resultant is the same. Okay, great. Now, what do I do next? Is that I'll take something like a ranitidine or a pantoprazole, that's a Pan 40 or a Pan D or things like that. So what that does is that will basically, it's called a PPI, it's a proton pump inhibitor. So it will basically stop the good acid from being produced, which means, okay, I have 20 seconds left, I'll wrap it up. Thank you all for coming. The good acid is no longer being formed, and because of that you again have indigestion. So acidity will always continue. You'll know a lot of people who will be on acidity pills throughout the entire day. This episode will be on IGTV and YouTube, and I will share the